Well, after 17 years with the Jets, tell me about your move to the Oakland Raiders, where I know that you'll be reunited with a couple of guys that you played with at Austin East, the McKenzie twins.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it'll be fun to work with those guys again. We go back such a long way. Working for the Jets was it was a great experience. I learned a lot, and it was actually tough leaving. But I think I left for the right reasons. And I think Reggie has the Raiders going in the right direction, so I'm glad to be a part of it.
You said left for the right reasons. Would that be a promotion, or what would be?
It was a promotion. I was the vice president of scouting with the Jets. I was over basically all of college scouting and the draft. And with the Raiders, I'm over both pro and college personnel and scouting, and again with the draft. So yes, it was a promotion, and it's another opportunity to grow.
When you were with the Jets, did you draft many former Vols, and did you draft many players from the SEC?
We didn't draft a lot of former Vols. We drafted, I was there when we drafted Sean Ellis. We drafted Austin. I can't remember his first name. He was a safety. We drafted Cedric Houston. But we didn't draft many Vol players. And we've had a Northeast team is not always looking for, the same type player that maybe the Titans are looking for. And then it becomes a matter of the skill set of the player. So, unfortunately, we didn't draft a ton of SEC players. It's not because I didn't want to necessarily, but, that's just the way the draft went.
Hey, Joey, this is Vince Ferrara. Good to talk to you.
Vince, how are you?
I'm good. I appreciate it. So can you elaborate on that a little bit? Because I find that interesting. I think the Raiders have had their fair share of SEC guys on that roster right now. Talk about the differences in the type of players that you would bring in a Northeast NFL team as opposed to some others in the South.
Well, I think Northeast teams are a lot more comfortable with guys that are used to playing in colder climates, because most of the Northeast teams, at least in the NFC East, don't have stadiums that get really cold. And sometimes guys from the South have a tough time adjusting to cold weather. It's a bit of a transition. And I'm not saying that that's a reason not to take the player, but, that's always another piece of the puzzle when you're evaluating a player.
So you got out of New York just in time to stay out of the way of Tebow mania up there in New York, right?
That will be a bit of a circus. It was in Denver, and Tebow is a great kid. First and foremost, he's a great kid. But but New York is used to a little bit of a circus atmosphere, so he'll fit right in.
And he's going to have short sleeves in that cold weather, and he's an SEC guy, too.
Absolutely.
Hard Knocks, HBO's Hard Knocks, featured the Jets. What did you think about that?
That's interesting. It gives the fan a chance to look at the football, the humanistic part of the game of football. The what goes on in training camp, the tough decisions that have to be made by the personnel departments on cutting players and signing players, and guys that may hold out, and some of the things that go on from that standpoint. So I think it's valuable for the fan who's trying to get a better insight of the ins and outs of a NFL team.
Were there any negatives to the Jets being on there? Or do you think that was a positive exposure for the franchise?
I think it was a positive exposure for the franchise. I think any franchise that go on, it can be a positive exposure. I mean, history tells you, though, if you're a historian, history tells you that I don't think there's been a team to go on Hard Knocks and, played in the Super Bowl or won a Super Bowl. So if that's your aspiration, then, maybe you should do Hard Knocks. But it's a fun experience.
I know you hadn't been with the Raiders long, but do you see that right now as a team that's ready to jump in there and be a solid playoff team?
Well, absolutely. I think, just coming from New York and been around football as long as I have, the first thing that jumps out about the Raiders is the team speed. I think we're a fast football team. We have speed on every level. I think we're a big physical team, especially inside. When you're building a team, building an organization, you like to build them from the inside out, meaning the nose, the three technique, the inside backers, the safeties, and I think those are the strong areas, especially defensively, on our football team. So I'm excited about the opportunity that we have, and we have a bright young coach in Dennis Allen Again, we're led by Reggie McKenzie, so I'm excited to be a part of the process.
Talk about the differences in seeing guys play a 3-4 or a 4-3 and then maybe doing something different in the NFL. How you're able to project guys that maybe play a different system than what you have and how you can see if they can fit in yours.
Well, first of all, when you're looking from a defensive perspective, you're looking at, the over fronts, the under fronts, whether the guy, the most important position is the defensive end / linebacker. So a lot of times there are very few college programs that play a 34 defense. So most of them play in a 4-3. So you have a defensive end, and you have to figure out whether that guy's athletic enough, is strong enough to set the edge, is smart enough to stand up and play on his feet and be a rusher, to be able to drop in coverage. So those are the things in the 34 defense that's pretty important. And from a defensive line perspective, the end, you usually have a base end who's usually a pretty big, stout guy. But again, most of your pass rushing in the 34 is coming from the outside linebacker positions, and then you have to have a middle linebacker that's in the 34 that's willing to take on a guard 30, 40 times a game. So that guy can't be little. He's got to be a big, stout, strong, smash-mouth kind of football player.
Joe, I want to take you back to your college days. Coming out of Austin East, was there any doubt you were going to go to Tennessee? Did other schools recruit you? Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I was recruited by quite a few teams. I was, truth be told, I was really leaning toward going to Oklahoma. That was, I grew up being a Oklahoma Sooner fan, watching those guys run the wishbone, and I felt like I could have been a quarterback in that system. And on my recruiting trip, they had 19 inches of snow, and somehow being a quarterback at Oklahoma didn't seem quite as fun as it would have, had it been sunny and dry. So, I chose Tennessee, and in that recruiting class, we had 8 quarterbacks to come in. So, obviously, that was a battle. But, the cream rose to the top pretty quick about who was the best quarterback. So, after 3-4 months, it was like, okay, I think I'm going to find me another position to play. So, I eventually settled on wide receiver. But, we had a kid in that class, Tony Robinson, who, from a skill set standpoint, was as good as, from the time I was, halfway through the NFL, he was as good as anybody I had seen or played with. I mean, the kid really had a ton of ability. It's a shame, what happened shortly after his injury, but from a skill set standpoint, he was as talented as any quarterback you would have seen in a long time.
One of those 8 quarterbacks was Charles Davis, and Charles told me that it didn't take long to see that he needed to move positions after watching Tony Robinson throw a football.
Absolutely, he was a different breed. He was a different character. He was athletic. He was tall. He was very lean. Had a real sinewy build, but he could really spin the football. And after a while, and watching him throw the ball, and being as athletic as he is, and I think all of us said, what, we might need to find another position, and I think the coaches knew that. When we came in the door, they knew that, but they needed for us to recognize that we needed to play another position, and I think they recruited us as athletes more than quarterbacks, so that they felt like we were athletic enough to transition to other positions.
If Tony Robinson had not been hurt and then had his subsequent issues, do you think he'd have been a really good NFL quarterback?
I have no doubt in my mind. I think he had the skill set to do that. He was a fairly bright kid as far as his football IQ. So I don't have any doubt in my mind that he would have had the opportunity to be a really successful quarterback, because he was a passer. He was pretty accurate. He was mobile. He ran just enough to get himself out of trouble. But he had a cannon for an arm.
Jory, are there any other former Vols that maybe you're surprised that didn't have a better, more successful NFL career? And then is there someone that comes to mind, another former Vol that maybe had an even better NFL career than maybe when you saw him in college you would have thought?
You know what? Not really. And the reason why I say that is the NFL is a different breed. Because, everybody, despite the level of competition they play at, once they get on the field, everybody has the same opportunity. And it becomes about athletic ability, skill set, football IQ, and how bad a guy wants it. You know, sometimes you get guys from bigger schools who've been pampered a whole lot, and they think they're going to be pampered in our league. And you really have to earn the ability to be pampered. That's something that Bill Parcells used to tell us all the time. You really had to earn that ability, and you didn't get that walking in the door because you were a first-round pick or a fourth-round pick. Once everybody walked on the field, it didn't matter whether you were first or a seventh round or ninth round pick because everybody had the same opportunity, which is why, Reggie and Raleigh played, 16 years, and he was a ninth or 10th or 11th round pick. I'm not sure what it was at the time, but and he played 16 years and 3 Super Bowls later. And, so it doesn't matter how you started. It all depends on how you finish, and, you have to have that mindset walking in the door that, I'm hungry, and this is what I want to do.
Is that much tougher for players these days to understand that you have to earn the right to be pampered?
Oh, absolutely. I think so. I mean, we're in a generation now. I say this like I'm an old guy, and I guess I am at this point. But we're in a generation where we're looking for instant gratification, and that doesn't happen on that level right away. Especially when you're dealing with veteran players who have been paid pretty well, and they're not so ready to let the rookie come in and have their job. So it's definitely a competition.
Joey, a couple more questions. We'll let you go. How and why did you get into scouting?
It was just by chance, to be honest with you. I played it for the Steelers, and then I went to Tampa Bay. But while I was with the Steelers, I made, I guess I left a pretty good impression on a few people. And when I left there to go to Tampa, Tom Donahoe sent me a letter and saying, if anything I can ever do for you, you were, a great guy here, and I'd be happy to do it. And so after I finished playing, I just on a whim said, you know what, I'm going to try scouting. And, he got me hooked up part-time there, and Dick Haley, who helped draft me there, who I called my surrogate father because, he drafted me to the Steelers, and then he was like the general manager with the Jets, probably more the player personnel director. So, and then he hired me with the Jets. So, he took care of me for a long time. So I'm grateful for him. But, I guess the things you do, if you do things the right way and people are able to see that, then, you're afforded certain opportunities. And I've been blessed in that aspect.
Going into the 1985 season, it had been a long time since Tennessee had won an SEC championship, and that team is still one of the most revered and one of the most loved teams in Tennessee history based on what you accomplished. Joey, going into that year, did you have any idea that Tennessee could win an SEC title?
Well, I thought we went into the year thinking we had the ability to be a pretty good team. Again, Tony was, I'm not sure if that was his, I think that was the second year as a starter.
Correct.
Been his first. But, he was athletic. We had a pretty good receiver core. The defense was led by, Dale Jones and Charles in the secondary, and Chris White, who had, I think, 10 or 11 interceptions that year. So we felt like we had some pieces, and things were going our way early, and then Tony gets hurt, and then Darryl steps in, and I think the first game he started was a tie versus Army, if I'm not mistaken.
Georgia Tech.
Or Georgia Tech.
Yeah.
And, so that there were some things to happen that kind of, made you wonder if the season would go like you wanted it to go. But Coach Majors was, he kept things going, and the coaching staff that he had. And it turned out to be a great season. Darryl played wonderfully. Jeff Powell turned up the heat, and he, obviously in the Sugar Bowl, he had an outstanding game. We had Tim and Anthony Miller. So we had a really good receiver core, offensive line led by David Douglas and some guys. So we really had some things going in our favor, and we became a hot team.
You knew you were pretty good when you beat top-ranked Auburn, didn't you?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Defense played outstanding, and offense played great that game. Tony was on fire. So things were things were rolling in our direction. So we felt really good about the season at that point. And we should have beat Florida that year, and something fluke happened, and we didn't. And but that didn't stop our momentum.
It was only about 190 degrees down there that day. I remember that.
Yes, it was.
Wow.